relatives of Anitra Gunn left the courtroom because the details of her death were too much to handle.
I noticed that there was a contusion or a bruise on the forehead. I did notice that there was something called scleral hemorrhage, which is bleeding into the white parts of the eyes. If someone is being strangled, they will attempt to remove the ligature or hands around the neck. So in some cases, you can get fingernail imprints of actually the deceased individual's fingernail on their own neck. I can't say definitively that's what these are, but these do have that appearance.
Off to my right in the wooded area, I noticed what looked like a previous road that may have been used or a path back in the woods, and it looked as if a car had possibly been there recently. So I backed up, drove up in there.
This gun was lying dead, covered with debris.
That's correct.
A damaged white Chevy Cruze sat abandoned along a Georgia roadside, its bumper torn away, its driver nowhere to be found. Her phone had gone silent before sunrise, and by the time police located the car, one question was already echoing through Fort Valley. What could make a bright 23-year-old vanish on Valentine's morning? And why did the man who claimed to love her act as if nothing was wrong? This is the story of Anitra Gunn, a college student whose disappearance began as a mystery, became a manhunt, and ended in a courtroom where the word love lost all meaning. For Anitra's family, Valentine's Day would never again mean roses or heart-shaped candy. It became the day they started living a nightmare, the day calls went unanswered and fear grew louder than hope. Her father, Christopher, would later say that when she didn't reply by mid-morning, something in him knew. The silence didn't feel ordinary. It felt final. February 13th, 2020 was supposed to be just another Thursday. Anitra, a Fort Valley State University senior majoring in visual and performing arts, attended a small off-campus gathering with friends. They laughed, played music, and planned for spring graduation. She was radiant, looking ahead to what was next. But when the night ended, she left not with the friend she arrived with, but with her on-again, off-again boyfriend, 22-year-old Demarcus Little, a U.S. Army sergeant stationed at Fort Gordon in Augusta. A few hours later, around 2 in the morning, security cameras captured them at a Waffle House, eating quietly. 30 minutes after that, they drove off into the dark. It was the last confirmed sighting of Anitra alive. By sunrise, her phone stopped ringing. Calls from her father went straight to voicemail. Texts remained unread. Friends assumed she was catching up on sleep, but by late afternoon, the worry became unmistakable. She hadn't shown up for work. No one had seen her on campus. Her car was missing. Later that day, officers found it abandoned on Bell Street near her apartment. The bumper was missing. The sides were scraped. Her purse was gone. The car looked as if it had been hastily driven off the road and left there. But there was no sign of a struggle and no sign of Anitra. When a young woman disappears in a small Georgia town, word spreads fast. Flyers appeared overnight. Students organized vigils before authorities even issued a missing person alert. By the next morning, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation had joined the search. Helicopters swept over wooded areas. Volunteers combed ditches, creeks, and fields. Christopher Gunn, desperate but composed, told reporters, "It's not her not to call. Something is wrong." Detectives focused immediately on the man who'd seen her last. Demarcus said she'd left his aunt's house early that morning, alive, after they'd eaten. He claimed they hadn't argued, and that he had no idea where she'd gone. Investigators wanted to believe him, but they also knew this wasn't the first time something troubling had happened between them. Just 9 days earlier, police had been called after someone slashed Anitra's tires and smashed the windows of her apartment. At the time, she hadn't pressed charges, but friends said she suspected Demarcus. Prosecutors would later confirm that he was indeed responsible. What looked like a petty outburst had, in hindsight, been an unmistakable warning. For 4 tense days, search teams scoured the counties surrounding Fort Valley. Then, on February 18th, a Peach County deputy searching near the Crawford County line spotted something under a pile of brush. He pushed the branches aside and froze. It was the body of a young woman. The features matched Anitra's description. The search was over. Hope collapsed. The autopsy confirmed the worst. Anitra Gunn had been killed by manual strangulation. This was no accident, no random act of violence. It was intimate, deliberate, and fueled by control. Investigators began piecing together her final months: text messages, phone logs, conversations with friends. The same name appeared again and again: Demarcus Little. In those messages, Anitra described feeling manipulated and drained. She told him plainly that they needed to stop talking, because every time they did, she felt worse. His replies were angry, accusing, possessive. He accused her of playing games, of seeing other men, even threatening to harm himself if she ended things. Friends said she'd been trying to move on. She kept up her grades, worked at a local restaurant, smiled through choir rehearsals, but in private she was exhausted. To them, the relationship seemed turbulent. To her, it had become dangerous. And 9 days before she disappeared, that danger had left physical damage. Her tires slashed, her windows shattered. Now detectives saw it as the first act of an escalation that would end in murder. While investigators processed the crime scene, another development deepened the mystery. Just hours after Anitra was reported missing, her father's phone rang. A voice on the line demanded $8,000, claiming to know where she was. At first, police treated it like a ransom demand, but after tracing the number, they realized it was a hoax, possibly meant to mislead them. Whether Demarcus was behind that call remains unclear, but prosecutors later used it to show a pattern: deception layered over control. Someone had tried to confuse the timeline, and only one person fit the pattern perfectly. On February 18th, the same day her body was found, police brought Demarcus in for questioning. They arrested him first for the earlier vandalism incident, a tactical move that bought them time. While he sat in custody, detectives pored over phone records. Data showed Anitra's last known location near his aunt's home, the same place he claimed she left alive. Vegetation samples from his car matched plant matter from the wooded area where her body was discovered. Then another name surfaced: Javon Abron, a friend and fellow soldier. Investigators believed he knew more than he'd said. After hours of interrogation, Abron broke down. He told detectives that Demarcus had confessed to him that he killed Anitra during an argument after she laughed when he told her he loved her. The statement was chilling and would become the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. By February 25th, a Peach County grand jury had indicted Demarcus Little on charges of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and concealing a death. The indictment alleged that on Valentine's Day, he strangled Anitra Gunn and left her body hidden beneath brush in Crawford County. The trial would not begin until March of 2022, more than 2 years later. When it finally opened, the courtroom was full. Students, reporters, family members, people from Fort Valley who had followed every update since the day she disappeared. For Christopher Gunn, it was the first time he'd been in the same room as the man accused of killing his daughter. The prosecution's case was methodical. They opened with the timeline: the Waffle House footage, the vandalism 9 days before, the text messages that revealed manipulation and jealousy, and the testimony from Javon Abron quoting Demarcus's own words, "I had to get rid of her." They argued that this wasn't a crime of sudden rage, but a slow, escalating pattern of control that turned fatal when Anitra tried to leave. When it was the defense's turn, Demarcus himself took the stand. He admitted to damaging her car and apartment, but denied killing her. He called her his soulmate. He said he would never hurt her. His attorneys pointed to his military service, his lack of a criminal record, and claimed the state had no direct evidence tying him physically to the homicide scene. But the jury had already seen enough. The digital trail, the texts, the pattern of violence, and the confession from his friend all painted the same picture. After a week of testimony, the jury began deliberations. It took them roughly 3 hours to return with a verdict: guilty of felony murder and aggravated assault. He was acquitted of malice murder, but the outcome was the same. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Anitra's family, it was a measure of justice, though not peace. Christopher Gunn listened quietly as the sentence was read. 2 years of waiting ended in a single moment that felt both final and hollow. Outside the courthouse, prosecutors spoke to reporters. They said this case wasn't just about one relationship. It was about recognizing the red flags that society still tends to overlook. They talked about the danger of minimizing emotional abuse, how jealousy and control can be precursors to violence. They wanted Anitra's story to be more than a tragedy. They wanted it to be a warning. At Fort Valley State University, a vigil was held in her honor. Students lit candles in the campus chapel where she used to sing. Professors shared stories about her kindness, her focus, her talent. One recalled how Anitra stayed after class to help younger students practice vocal harmonies. Another said she never once complained about the workload, always smiling, always pushing forward. Her death shook the school deeply. It felt like losing family. In the years since, her case has continued to resonate. Local organizations use her story to raise awareness about dating violence and to teach young people how control can disguise itself as affection. Her father remains active in those efforts. Every February, he posts her photo online with the caption, "Still shining." It's his way of keeping her memory alive and reminding others that no one is untouchable when it comes to domestic abuse. Anitra Gunn was only 23. She'd already known grief. Her mother, Melissa, died in a car crash when Anitra was 16, but she had refused to let that loss define her. She poured herself into her studies, her choir, her art, and her community. She was a daughter who made her father proud, a friend who lifted up everyone around her, and a young woman who deserved to see her future. Her story is a reminder that danger doesn't always come from a stranger in the dark. Sometimes it comes from someone smiling beside you. Someone whose words sound like love, but feel like control. If you or someone you know ever feels unsafe in a relationship, reach out for help. In the United States, you can contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. In other places, look up a local hotline or shelter near you. Speak up. Tell someone. Because silence can be deadly, and stories like Anitra's should never have to be told again. Anitra's life mattered. Every song she sang, every class she took, every dream she chased. Remember her not just for how she died, but for how she lived, with determination, creativity, and light. If you believe her story deserves to be remembered, leave a ha in the comments and share her name. Hashtag Justice for Anitra. Hashtag Twisted Crimes. Hashtag Receipts Only. Because remembering her isn't about revisiting pain. It's about accountability. It's about warning the next person who might be living through the same pattern right now, wondering if what they feel is normal. It isn't. Anitra Gunn's story doesn't end with a verdict. It continues with every person who chooses to listen, to learn, and to act before it's too late. May her memory shine brighter than the darkness that tried to silence her.